after lots of heavy rain, and here you are anyway on a Sunday, and that's fantastic. We're absolutely delighted to see you. I have many wonderful friends in the audience among you. I have several students from UCLA. I have several former students from UCLA and ongoing students. It's really, really wonderful. And I know that you're all going to be in for a treat. So those of you who don't know me, my name is Miri Coral, and I'm the director. Thank you. Did he do that, or did I do that? I'm the director. He's the helper, and I'm going to thank all the helpers in a moment. I'm the director of the California Institute for Yiddish Culture and Language. We have, believe it or not, it's in this year, if you count the very beginning, this is our 20th year of being in existence as a nonprofit, working to keep Yiddish in the consciousness of present generations, so that in the future there'll be those that can still appreciate this extraordinary heritage and hopefully find means to still access it, if not outright speak it, which would be even more wonderful. We've had hundreds of programs associated with this series, the series of contemporary Yiddish, the showcase of contemporary Yiddish culture. A whole range of materials. Many of you have come for those things. And this is just one of a series this year. So I just want to tell you what's coming up. So coming very soon, coming in March. Let's put it here for a second. We still have a bunch of things this year coming in March. Actually, I'm doing a presentation at the Fairfax Library talking about what Yiddish is all about and essentially what is happening with Yiddish today. I mean, it's not just us here who are doing something to try to preserve Yiddish, but it's happening in other parts of the world, and I'm giving you a little bit of an overview about that. And if you wanted to understand a little bit more about the language itself, what makes up the language, then please come. That's going to be on March 11th at the Fairfax branch. On April 7th, an amazing event, a dramatic reading by Theodor Dibuk of the play God of Vengeance, which is by Sholem Ash. If you've heard of the play Indecent, have any of you heard of that? Indecent, which is coming to the Amundsen in a couple of months. And the play, which won many prizes on Broadway, is based upon the mounting of this Yiddish play, God of Vengeance, and the fact that the entire cast and crew were arrested because they violated the decency clause. So that, if nothing else, that should pique your interest. And it's a wonderful, wonderful group, Theodor Dibuk. They've done readings for us. They've done the Dibuk for us, and Bronx Express, and other readings, and they're doing God of Vengeance at Wilshire Boulevard Temple, but the West Side campus. So that's April 7th. And in June, we are bringing from New York wonderful Shane Baker. Do any of you remember seeing Shane? Yes. He is coming as the first ever Yiddish drag queen. And he's going to be doing a show called Introducing Miss Mitzi Mana in her first ever final farewell tour. And I saw it in New York, and it's fabulous. You forget in a very short while that this 6 foot tall strapping guy is not a blonde-haired, delicate Yiddish actress singing Yiddish songs and talking about her life, her sad life in the Yiddish theater. But he's wonderful. It's going to be in the auditorium, the Mark Taper Auditorium in the downtown library. So really, and I'm sure we'll have a full house. So mark that as well. That's June 2nd. And he's going to be giving a talk at the Fairfax Library on one of the most wonderful contemporary actresses who recently passed away. Maybe some of you have heard of her, Mina Birobidzhan. She was a great actress of the Yiddish stage. And in June, Gustavo, who's here, yes, who is not just acting as our sound engineer today, but many of you know him as the head of Klezmer Juice and a fantastic clarinetist. And we're going to be giving a program of Yiddish poetry read to the sound of jazz and jazz klezmer music. And that's going to be at Mishkan Tefillah in June. And August, backed by popular demand, Yoshiji Hirose is going to be giving a talk on how to translate Yiddish humor into Japanese and not lose your punchline. So that will be wonderful in August. So I know some of you have come from far. I know people are here from Toronto. Someone's coming in who just literally landed from Tokyo today, a few hours ago. Welcome. And I know some of you have even schlepped as far as the valley. and you will definitely find it worth it. So I am really, really excited about today's event for personal reasons. First, just in terms of family history, some of you may know my family has a very unhappy history with the Soviet Union. Even though they were Polish Jews, my parents managed to get away from the Nazis only to fall into the clutches of Stalin. So when I learned a number of years ago that this place, Birobidzhan, that Stalin actually created something that was meant to be of good use for the Jews, I was astonished. And I subsequently learned what a fascinating and complex story it is of Birobidzhan. And of course, we have with us today someone who lived a lot of that story. So that in itself is amazing. And then aside from that, just the fact that Kolya was willing to fly in from New York just for this, just to give us this talk. And I know from my own personal experience what an amazing presenter he is and teacher that he is. So let me give you a bit of background about Kolya. So we know he's a passionate and dedicated educator. He's been since 2002 the master teacher and coordinator of Yiddish programming at Workman's Circle, New York. He has designed and implemented Jewish educational programs for children and adults, and he himself teaches Yiddish language and culture nationally and internationally to multi-generational audiences, sometimes as many as 4 generations together. His dynamic teaching style has garnered a growing fan base across the US and beyond. He's credited with giving hundreds of Yiddishists their foundation in the language. When I first encountered Kolya, he was giving a little lesson in Yiddish, and he was doing it with a rubber ball, like throwing rubber balls at the audience. So he's constantly coming up with new and exciting ways to impart our language. Also, since 2000, he's the Yiddish programming coordinator at CLES Canada Festival of Yiddish Jewish Arts and Culture in Quebec, which means that he coordinates all Yiddish courses and activities at a week-long festival of 500 participants. He's then the author of a number of Yiddish educational materials, including Yiddish year-round, a curriculum for the young beginners, and he instigated the Wiki Secular Jewish Schools Network, linking curricula and communications resources for 20 Jewish supplementary schools in Canada and the US. And he'll tell you a little bit about Trip to Yiddishland, which he designed and produced. It's a program that takes place at Circle Lodge in Hopewell Junction, New York. And it's an intergenerational, experiential family education program. He received his BA from Khabarovsk Teachers College and his MA in Yiddish from my alma mater, Columbia University. He's received many awards in recognition of his dedication and skills, including that, and this is a little bit of a mystery to me, the 2008 California Legislator Assembly Certificate of Recognition for leadership in the Jewish community. So welcome home, Kolya, to California. Okay, I think I will leave it at that. So Kolya Borodulin.
It's my first, one of the first Yiddish teachers used to say, "Seid mir noch nicht gesund." So I haven't studied yet. So, and I hope not to disappoint your expectations. And I really, really moved that you preferred the Oscars to this lecture of Birobidzhan. I appreciate your coming here, and I'm especially moved by Sataka, who made all her way from Japan. She's made it for some other reason, but she made it possible. Sataka is the Yiddish language instructor in Tokyo Institute for Languages, and sometimes she gets 34, 36 Japanese coming to her class to study Yiddish. Auf uns Eden gesagt. I really want you to. The presentation is based on slide. You will miss 80% of presentation if you are sitting here. You won't see what's going on. And I really want to capture your attention by this unique slide. So you do have time to shift and to sit so you'll be able to see it. As they say in Yiddish, without these slides, it's nicht dahin und nicht daher, nicht gesteugen, nicht geflogen. So let's give it a few minutes so that you feel comfortable, because I brought these materials with me so that I can share my love, my passion, my enthusiasm, and hopefully I ignite some of you with it.
No, we can't at this stage, but we'll put some chairs there.
It doesn't look like it. Cuando fue porque es la historia de una familia judía que
Hey, Miriam, so what? So before we start this journey to Birobidzhan, the place by the way, who of you heard this name before coming to the lecture? This is great. This is great. And I think that before people are just settling, 2 words. Miri, I think I'll do it now because I'm directing the Yiddish program, international Yiddish program of the Workman Circle. I think this is the largest program in the United States, maybe in the world. Last semester we had 330 students in 31 classes, 23 of them online, where we had students from 18 countries and 23 states. Sataka is one of the students, and she takes 2 classes every semester. She's a very devoted student. So if you are interested, come see me afterwards, and I'll happily, we start in 2 weeks, so you still have time to start your Yiddish, new year with new Yiddish. Maybe can I start? Yeah? So you still see people drifting, but it's actually very good, all things considered. Jewish time works, but I mean, we are a little bit ahead of the game. I'm very, very often struck by the idea that everything which happens in this world, and I'm struck more and more, everything that happens in this world is not by mere chance. It's, as they say in Yiddish, b'sheert. I want to keep your eyes and ears. It's just also a good exercise not to fall asleep to these instances of b'sheert, which I will be bringing during this story, which is really very, very emotional and personal, and yet gives us an amazing an idea of such a great, big world around us, and yet a small Yiddish world. And I want to start with a personal story which happened in 1988, but I remember as if it happened yesterday. And it was a very beautiful, sunny day in mid-September, almost like this. And I'm strolling along Sholem Aleichem Street in Birobidzhan, which is the major thoroughfare, and I meet an acquaintance who greets me and wishes me happy holiday. And I look at him as if he's from the moon, or I'm from Mars, and I go, what the hell are you talking about? What holiday? Till October Revolution Day is more than a month to go. And he says, and he asks, don't you know that today is a Jewish holiday? And I go, what? What Jewish holiday are you talking about? And he says, don't you know that today is Rosh Hashanah? And I go, what is Rosh Hashanah? I'm 27 years old. I am Jewish. I know that I'm Jewish. I am proud, with a weird pride of being Jewish, because Karl Marx was Jewish and all these famous champion chess players were Jewish. Yet, I had no idea at the age of 27 what is Rosh Hashanah. Moreover, at that time, I started to teach Yiddish. How? I was called by the dean of the newly established Teachers College in Birobidzhan, the late Anatoly Surnin, non-Jew, who offered me a job to be a Yiddish language teacher, because they need a Yiddish language instructor to teach Yiddish as a second language, because there were no native language young people around. I said, listen, I don't know any Yiddish. I said, so take a book and teach yourself. What do you think? This is what I've done. No? Gesund und stark sollst du sein? Oi. Miri, dein Computer, toy. No, sitz. I started with this. And if some of you know, who of you know Hebrew letters? I went, oh, very nice. So if you take a look here, you see a very sympathetic picture of a pig, but Hazar is written with Hes. But there was no Hes at that time in Soviet Yiddish, together with other 5 major letters, which is a sign at the word as the word came from Hebrew. There were also no, for a long period of time, long letters, final letters. But this is another story. This is how I started. I started to teach myself, and I had a chutzpah in 2 months and start to teach both kids and adults. And this actually helped. This helped, and this brought me to New York, to Columbia University, graduate program, Yiddish program, which I graduated, got my degree, and in 1994, I started to work at IVA, Institute for Jewish Research, treasure of Yiddish language and culture, institution which has the largest archive on East European Jewry in the world, an amazing, precious library which carries unique Yiddish books and periodicals. I was very happy. And I was very happy that I could start to learn more about the place where I was born, Birobidzhan. I knew very, very little when I came to New York, but working at IVA was amazing. And then, at the end of 1990s, I was approached by the company IDC Publishers from Holland. This company is now called Brill Publishers. They specialize on microfilming and microfiching cultural and historical important documents, publications, materials. So they asked me to be their academic advisor. All right. To be their academic advisor in putting together the publications about Birobidzhan, which were created during the span of the years. I was overwhelmed. I had a direct access to these publications. And this collection was, can you imagine, 266 titles, which has to do with Birobidzhan. Birobidzhan, a capital city of still existing Jewish autonomous region in the far east of Russia. But then in the late 1920s and 30s, it was all over the map of the world, especially in the mind of socialist-minded Jews and non-Jews as well. 266 publications, 31 periodicals from the United States, Canada, Uruguay, Brazil, England, Poland, and so on, France, and of course Soviet Union. So I was putting this all together, and I was very, very excited to be a part of this project, which I will then hopefully be able to share with the people of my hometown. Very often, almost every day, going to Evo, I was passing this address, Broadway 799. Yes, I think this is better. Thank you, Mary. So I was passing this address without realizing that from 1928 till 1941, for 13 years, this was a headquarters of the ICOR organization of Jewish communists in United States and Canada, which supported the Jewish colonization in the Soviet Union. It was 5 blocks from Eva. And I never had this connection. I discovered this last year. This is a core. This is their emblem. Very, very telling. You see, it says us, those who can read. Gesellschaft für Yiddischer Kolonisatie in Rattenverband. In Sowjetenverband, Herr Schulger. In Sowjetenverband. Jewish organization to support Jewish colonization in the Soviet Union. IKOR in the late 1920s, early 1930s had more than 11,000 paying members and publications, as they say in Yiddish, onashir, without an end. This is the report of the American Jewish expedition to Birobidzhan in 1929. In 1929, the project started in 1928. In 1929, IKOR sent an expedition with scientists on agriculture, industry, marketing, history. They spent 6 months in Birobidzhan, in this area, and they came up with the report in 1930. Glorifying report. This is IKOR yearbook. Every year they would put 200 pages glorifying the building of this unique yet very, very complicated and controversial territory. They would publicize gifts which was sent to Birobidzhan. This was the print press for a newspaper which was sent from New York. And of course, the major publication of IKOR was 9/11, as you see, New Life. Can you imagine? I can't. From 1928 till 1935, it would come out as IKOR magazine, and then from 1935 to 1950 as 9/11. 22 years in a row. New York, they think of what's going on in this far, far forgotten place on earth, far east of Russia. Every issue filled with articles about Birobidzhan, editorials, poems, short stories, and a lot of enthusiastic pictures. This is, by the way, in Bauhaus style, the Jewish theater, Yiddish theater in Birobidzhan. And we can see and trace what Jews were doing in Birobidzhan, their jobs. And of course, a lot of propaganda, yet a lot of interesting materials, monthly, in Yiddish and in English. Look at these enthusiastic faces. They really were appealing to people, and people did come. Most of them left, and this is another story. I don't have time to tell about this, but I'm just going to do a very quick run. These covers are amazing. And interesting enough, I know some of these people. I know this guy who was my teacher of physical culture, physical training. But look at this. Or this. Even Jews did dig gold, not only in California, but in Birobidzhan as well. And we can see the places of rest, the restaurant, both in Russian but in Yiddish. Nature, kids, theater, fishing, school. This is all 9/11. This is all New York. Thousands pictures. This is my favorite. Look at this. This is 1939. This is already after the cruel repressions of 1937, but we are still propagandizing for Birobidzhan, and it says here 108,000 Birobidzhances so that American and Canadian Jews should think that these are Jews. But among these 108, maybe 25 to 30% were Jews. But what is very interesting is this, Herschel. This is Grapper who illustrated this. But this is an interesting guy. Who is this? This is the editor of Yiddish Forwards, Abe Khan, yeah? And he stands like this because he is embarrassed that he is not participating in the building of this great place. So, just to give you like a little idea, because this is a tip of the iceberg. How much was invested into this project? Among this publication of ICOR, I found a unique set of, you never saw this kind of things. This is what they call in Russia a wallpaper, like a self-made. It's, you see, it's handwritten and printed on the typewriter and glued to a big piece of paper, and it's called a wall newspaper. I found even a set from 1933. This is the only set in the world because you don't do it twice. You do it only once. Birobidzhan Ernayes, you can see. So it was both in Yiddish and Russian. This is my favorite. You see, like they have this play, and you wouldn't have it in a regular newspaper. But in the world newspaper, this is Reutebrett, like a wall of fame, and this is Schwarzebrett, wall of shame. So this, they would glorify people and organizations which do great job, and this, they would criticize people who work bad, who refrain from work, and so on and so forth. This is unique. This helps us to see what was going on then. This is a set from 1933. What is interesting, Birobidzhan, the city, has Birobidzhaner Stern started in 1930, but Birobidzhan has its sets only from 1935. 1930 to 1934 is missing, so this fills the gap. But this set has an amazing story of its own. I found this newspaper in 1997 and forgot about this. But lately, because it was microfilmed and the copy was a very, very bad shape. So you can't see and read anything. So I asked permission to make decent pictures of this, to take pictures of these wall newspapers, and I found out in several issues on the back this stamp with inscription Gesammelt durch Gershon Epstein, Paris. I asked the archivist from IVA to bring me some information about this accession. And he brought, and I read some other materials, and Gershon Epstein was he was a regular Sammler, collector for IVA in Paris. It's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable because I felt myself like a Sherlock Holmes because I wanted to see what he done, what happened. You don't need to be a Sherlock Holmes nowadays, yeah? The role of Sherlock Holmes is filled by Mr. Google. So Mr. Google leads me to the book Smugglers, Partisans, Poets, and the Race to Save Jewish Treasures from the Nazis, about the Paper Brigade, one of the most fascinating stories in the history of Vilna Ghetto, written by David Fishman, published recently, October 2017. So, and David Fishman is a very good acquaintance. I met him for the first time in 1989 in Moscow at the very, very first seminar of Yiddish teachers after more than 40 years of suppressed silence. So he wrote this book. And in this book, I read, and it really blew me away. Just listen to the names. I read that Max Weinreich, director of Birobidzhan in New York, asked Gershon Epstein, to get in touch with Avrom Sutzkever and get from him materials and bring them to New York Eva. This is not a mystery. We know that this was done. And Sutzkever delivered more than 260 documents, among which I believe was this set, because there is no other connection with Epstein. He wouldn't go to Birobidzhan to collect this set. Eva was collecting all interesting materials from all over the world from the year when it starts, from 1925. So it's not 100% confirmed, but 91, yes. So I think that I will dig it further and I'll find out the exact data, and then I'll update you through Miri. So the problem is that this unique set, the only one in the world, is in very bad shape, as you can see. The letters are fading away, so you can, so the paper crumbles. So it's time to really rescan it, or really make a very, very good resolution picture so that it will remain. Because the information, although most of it is propaganda, some of it is very, very relevant to what was going on in Birobidzhan in those years. So, we are coming to another interesting story. Working at Eva for 7 years, I was collecting duplicates and created my own library with about Birobidzhan, and my goal was to bring it eventually to the place I was born. But in 2012, bad thing happened. Yeah? The Hurricane Sandy struck. I had my collection. I was a nar, a fool, yeah? So I had it in the basement. And this is what happened. And I had over 1,000 books and periodicals, many of which were signed by famous Yiddish writers. 깰פאלן. I was devastated. I really didn't know what to do. I was going here, wandering, putting mechanically damaged books and periodicals into garbage bags. And I was looking for a plastic bag, for a very, very special plastic bag. And I couldn't find it on the first day of search because it's so much. But on the second day, I found it. And it's written here, Birobidzhan. Here I kept the best of my collection. And when I opened it, as they say in Yiddish, I almost halished. I almost fainted. Because all these books and periodicals and some rare audio recordings were intact. Take a look here. It's all went through. This was intact. I'm not a religious person, but I raised my head and I said, Adank dir Gott. This was unbelievable. And this, what I brought to Birobidzhan last fall. But most of the issues which I showed from 9/11 were destroyed, unrecoverable. I was very, very, very sad. Preparing for this trip to Birobidzhan, I was trying to kind of revive this collection, and I was asking people who I knew might have something about Birobidzhan which they can share with me. And I talked to Henry Srebnik, who you probably know, Herschel, yeah? Who is the major expert on Jewish communist movement in the United States and Canada, the author of 3 very important books on this subject. So I'm calling Henry, and I'm telling him my problem. I'm telling him that I'm going to Birobidzhan if he has some duplicates of New Life, 9/11. And he says, you know, so funny, tomorrow, I'm going to New York Public Library to give them a set of microfiches about Birobidzhan. And I think, okay. I asked very, very shyly, but maybe instead he will give it to Birobidzhan in order of 90th anniversary of establishing the place. I was surprised that his answer was positive. He said yes. And he sent me this box. And when I opened it, again, I howled. I really fainted. Because these were the collection which I helped to put together with IDC publishers. He gave it all. The entire set of 9/11, the entire set of Ecor yearbooks, everything. This is unbelievable, and this is now in Birobidzhan, and this is going to be scanned and put on internet and be available to everybody who wants to learn something about this place. This is unbelievable. I don't know how to thank Henry enough. What he did was like, I would never expect this Matona gift, so I'm very, very, very pleased, lucky, happy. But let's move on. So I haven't been to my place. This is one of the major reasons of my coming to Birobidzhan was to bring this literature I just showed you, which I brought. Mission is not accomplished because another reason of my coming to my hometown was this. I started my career as a Yiddish language teacher there. And I thought that with my expertise of working in the field of Yiddish education for 25 years, I can bring something to the table. Although it's a bit too late, but still I can. And I was going, and I did. And I was so happy. I didn't recognize this city, Birobidzhan, after 25 years not being there. But I feel at home. So this is when you come to Birobidzhan, you have this huge monument which says Birobidzhan, es ist bedarf zu sein. So many people are confusing this with stevia, fiddler from Duff, but these are the first settlers who came to Birobidzhan, and they would come, when they would come to the railway station, the horse with a carriage will take them to the places. So this was another reason for me to share my love and passion to the Yiddish language. And I had a privilege to, so another unbelievable, I mean, it's already, we have this Łעלט for 3-4 times, but this, how this cannot be Łעלט? I'm coming to Birobidzhan. On the very, very first day of my coming, they let me know that today, not yesterday, not tomorrow, today is the opening of the exhibition of my beloved art teacher, Dmitry Grigorievich Alexeyev, late. He's died years ago. But he taught me for 7 years this amazing phenomenon of world civilization, art. He taught me how to appreciate art. But, to my surprise, among the exhibitions, exhibits, I saw my own picture. This is a linoleum carving which I did when I was 10 years old, and it's called "The Hunter's Thoughts," thoughts of the hunter. Isn't it neat Łעלט? So how exactly the same day? It didn't happen the day after. On the day, it was true. I was so overwhelmed I couldn't speak. And I had an opportunity and the privilege to teach Yiddish to kids and adults in Birobidzhan. There is public school number 23, elementary through 10 grades, so big school, maybe 2,000 kids. They have Jewish curricula for every grade. The kids, students learn Jewish culture, Jewish literature, holidays. They don't study Yiddish, unfortunately, because there is no instructor. These are famous Soviet Yiddish writers who Herschel recognizes immediately. And it's very touchy to see them. Also, this is the classroom, obviously devoted to Jewish history and culture. And it was amazing to teach them, because kids are like sponges. Look at them. They are so engaged. They love studying languages, especially if it goes with games. And I use a lot of games in my teaching. So they were really, I don't need to fully, it was 20 to 25 kids every day. I taught them 4 days in a row. And I think that all of them got a very positive attitude towards Yiddish, and you see they all say hooray to Yiddish. I also had an opportunity to teach Yiddish to students from the Jewish Sunday School, which is located within the JCC of Birobidzhan. Very nice classrooms, a lot of Yiddish present, except for the teacher. No Yiddish language instructor, unfortunately. But kids, I had 18 kids, they were so active again, you see they're all for Yiddish. And I had also an opportunity to give a first lesson to a new group of 20 adults who studied to study Yiddish on that very day. And now Yelena Sarashevskaya, who is the editor of Birobidzhan Stern, is teaching them on a weekly basis. This is probably a month ago. and some Hasidim coming from New York, because they are now building mikveh in Birobidzhan, so it's a few weeks before completion. So interesting. So interesting. This is a now coincidence. I will come back to Lenin Gas, Lenin Street 32. What is importance of this street? The editing house of Birobidzhan Stern, the only newspaper in the entire Russian Federation which comes weekly with 2 pages in Yiddish every single week. Many historical buildings have these flags with information about this building in Russian, Yiddish and English. This is about the building of the editing house Birobidzhan Stern. And I want to hook you, those who know Yiddish or Russian. It comes out in electronic form and also in paper. And Yiddish is not popular, extremely popular. You see, this is the interview with Sheva Zucker. Many of you may know her. She is the author of the Yiddish textbook, which is taught all over the country and other countries as well, translated into Portuguese, Italian, maybe some other languages. But look at this. On February 7th, there were 15,548 clicks. In comparison, the largest in Russian is 400. So it's hugely popular because it's circulated all over the world. I looked yesterday, it's already 16,200, so the number grows. So if you can read Yiddish, it's a very interesting source. And if you can read Russian, it's even more interesting because a lot of information, local information about history of this place, Jewish history of this place, which I hardly recommend. So, being in Birobidzhan Stern, I also found a newspaper from 1991 with me participating in the first Seder in Birobidzhan in 1991, when I was the chairman of the first Yiddish club, Mamaloshin. So, another Basher thing. There is community Yiddish Kehila Center, Freit. Beautiful name, Freit, joy. They have this rainbow flag symbol, which is not associated with people's identity. It's just they are very happy to be Jewish, to be in this place, to continue to celebrate Jewish culture. This is the chairperson of this community, of this organization, Freit, Simon Leider, who is very popular in the city and attracts number of Jews and non-Jews to be members of this society, organization. I had an opportunity to talk to them about these books I brought, got a lot of questions. This is a very sacred place for me. See, it's stylized, looks almost like Yiddish, right? But it's not. What it is, it's the Приамурский государственный State University имени in name of Sholem Aleichem. So the university has the name of Sholem Aleichem. It speaks volume, right? Not too many universities in the world have this name. For me, it's sacred because I started the first Yiddish-English department there in 1990. And it was very sad to find out that there is no more Yiddish language instruction in this place. However, I don't lose hope. I want to reverse this process. Miri, are you too? Are you here? Miri? Because I want to give... Miri. Okay, so because you'll tell her that I gave her some credit. Because I want to reverse this process, and one of our online students is a graduate student from Birobidzhan University, and he's now studying Yiddish through our online classes. This was this dean I told you about who encouraged me to become Yiddish language teacher, Surnin Anatoly Alexandrovich. You just missed the credit, Miri, because I told them that one of graduate students from Birobidzhan teaches university is your student, Yevgeny Lavachkin. Thanks to Miriam, Birobidzhan will have a Yiddish teacher soon. It was very, very sad. I had a group of 25 students from this university, and then I asked them who this person was. By the way, who this person, do you recognize? Shalom Aleichem. I said only 2 hands out of 25. They are the students of Shalom Aleichem Pedagogy University. One of the unique features of Birobidzhan, and it started 4 or 5 years ago, that most of the streets bear signs in Russian and Yiddish. I think this is the only place in the world nowadays. But this is so cool. This is Shalom Aleichem, Gast 59, and I'm standing with my friend, who I know since we were 5 years old, and we lived in this building. And how exciting it is to see the building Pionierskaya Gas, Pioneer Street, where I lived with my parents for 20 years. It really takes, I was crying seeing this. I couldn't imagine I would. There are also subtleties of Yiddish which we can see. It's not gas, but gesel, lane, yeah? Theatralny lane. We can also see Soviet Yiddish, black from the Soviet Yiddish, with this, there is no final, der mikrorayon, n should be final nun, but in the Soviet Yiddish for some time there were no finals, der mikrorayon is ongerufen again, and so on and so forth. And of course, in not so many places there is a monument to Shalom Aleichem, but when this monument is situated on the crossroad of Shalom Aleichem Street and Pushkin Street, it's amazing. It's amazing. I couldn't stop it. And when I came to Birobidzhan, I was staying in the hotel which facing this monument. The first thing I did, I made a zichale. Was is zichale? Was is zichale? Zichale is for the young generation, although everybody is doing this zichale. Miri knows, I taught her yesterday. What's a zichale? Selfie, yeah. I took my first zichale with Shalom Aleichem. And I posted it on Ponnenbuch, you know what? And I said, Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem. And I got maybe 300 hits, which I never did before and I never will. But this was amazing. Isn't it amazing that all this cultural and traditional institution, this is JCCs. First of all, nature, culture, architecture, shul, synagogue, restaurant, simcha, mikveh. It's also Soviet Yiddish. Yeah, this is the library in Shalom Aleichem's name. We have this the ganze Megillah of Yiddish. And it's also this place where my mom worked. This is the Miluchischer Museum. All these institutions, all are situated on Lenin Street. I mean, before I came to Birobidzhan this fall, I always thought it's so funny. But now I don't. Because, I mean, here you don't change the name all of a sudden. So it's a part of history. So it's interesting, it's weird, but it is what it is. I'm almost done, 5 minutes, 3. And then questions, good? It's so interesting. I came to Birobidzhan this fall on the eve of Rosh Hashanah. And it always I had this in my head, this story of Rosh Hashanah. I started this presentation. It was kind of a full circle I did. And I celebrated Rosh Hashanah with Jews and non-Jews of Birobidzhan. This is Birobidzhan Chief Rabbi, Eli Rees. He was born in Birobidzhan. His family then went to Israel when he was 3 years old. Then he got his education, rabbinical education, and he came back to Birobidzhan. And another unbelievable coincidence, his parents and his grandparents lived in the same apartment building, 1 story above my parents. A kleine Welt. A kleine Welt. He is a very charismatic guy, and he attracts a lot of young people to synagogue. The small world. And now, I'm almost done, because you see, it's a full circle. So what's then? There are very few Jews who are left there, because I know the very first question will be, how many Jews are in Birobidzhan? This is not important. What important is the Jewish life there? Is the Yiddish presence there? And I'm telling you, there is. And I want to show you just 2 amazing examples. And number 1 is this. Many of you know maybe Boris Sandler, who is a contemporary author, journalist, former editor of Forwards, author of 15 books, 10 Yiddish films. He published in Birobidzhan last year an amazing children's book, Elephant Ellie und Klepchik Bepchik. It was translated into Russian with aforementioned Yelena Sarashevskaya and illustrated, listen, with 50 beautiful illustrations done by kids from Art Center. These are the kids who did this. I have only 2 copies of this book, which I brought, if you are interested. But there are only 200 copies in the world. So but this is an amazing venture, I think. Very, very worthwhile mentioning and appreciating. There is a website which is called Yerusha, Наследие, where the chairman of this society is scanning and digitizing everything which has to do with Birobidzhan. The latest acquisition is the album of 1929, done by Ikor, with prominent Jewish artists who were also supporting Jewish colonization in the Soviet Union. This is Rybak, a very well-known Jewish artist participating in this project. So Jews do live in Birobidzhan, and non-Jews do appreciate Jewish culture in Birobidzhan. And I hope that I gave you some insights of what was going on, what is going on now and what can be. And I'm more than happy to answer a question if you have. And thank you so much for not interrupting me. So this was really amazing. Were you able to make some pictures? Yeah? Okay, great. Yes, you were the first because you were looking all the time at me. I know that you wanted to ask something. Yes.
So, could you explain, I'm confused, because you point out how the street signs
Yeah.
are both in Russian and in Yiddish.
Yes.
No? But, what I don't understand, you grew up there in Birobidzhan. You grew up, you're a Jew, but you spoke no Yiddish.
Yes.
Okay, you have to
Mm-hmm.
teach yourself and then go to Colombia? No? You come back. So
What's the question?
The street signs, are they after you got back?
Mhm.
And who was instrumental in putting all the Yiddish now? You?
No.
No. Okay.
So what is? It's a great question, but it's a question which needs an explanation, so that we should sit here till Purim. But we don't have time for this. Just I'll try to be brief.
Yeah.
I would really recommend a couple of good reads, not very long, not too sophisticated academic. There is an illustrated history of Birobidzhan by Robert Weinberg. Street signs were also a feature in the 1930s, when Jews came from all over the world to build this place. Some of them didn't know Russian, so there was a rationale. Now it's a kind of more of a fashion, but I like this fashion. I would love to have to see this all sign in Yiddish and Russian, so some people will most people will be aware that this is a Jewish place which was created by Jews. It's a very, very tragic story. I don't want to go into it today. I want to leave. But if you are interested, there are sources. So Jews went through hell, not only in Birobidzhan, in most of the places. But I mean, there is also some achievements, modest, which we should acknowledge, and there are some hopes, and there are some possibilities, which I think we should appreciate. Yes?
Yes, I'm sure you don't have time to answer this one.
But I'll ask anyway.
It's a big question, which is most fascinating, because we hear from elders and so forth. What was life like in the 20s? What was life in the 30s? What was it like in the 40s? So what was the experience of Birobidzhan? What was your experience for Birobidzhan? So and I know it's changed and there were tragedies and a bunch of things, but what was life like?
No, it's the most complicated question, because you saw scholarship, 266 titles about Birobidzhan. There were writers' union with over 20 people who were writing constantly about Birobidzhan, in Birobidzhan, being in Birobidzhan. So it was bad time, it was good time, people were happy, people were sad, there were natural disasters, there were achievements in the construction, so it's huge. I would again refer you to illustrate Stalin's Forgotten Zion, illustrated history of Birobidzhan, Robert Weinberg, gives you a lot of content. Yet it's not 100% objective. Yeah, I don't know of anything which is real objective. So we should judge by ourselves. It's impossible. I was born in 1961. My mom was born in 1930. Her family came to Birobidzhan in 1929, among the first families. Yeah, so she came from Ukraine. They were saved from hunger in the Ukraine. So we should recognize this fact also, that many Jews who came to the Ukraine in the first years were saved. There was job, there was food, it was very cold, but people survived there. World War II never touched Birobidzhan, so all Jews who were there were saved. Yes. So I know that I didn't answer your question, but because there were repressions in 1937, there were repressions in 1947, 48. Specifically, these were targeted Jews because 37, it's not only Jews, it was all over the country, hitting political figures, military, yeah, you know, so people who read history, they know. Yeah, see this.
What was the tenor of the political discussions between Jews who wanted to immigrate to Palestine and Jews who wanted to immigrate to Birobidzhan?
This is also an amazing. This I can tell you a couple of anecdotes about this. First of all, you could not after 1924. You could not emigrate to Israel, to Palestine, period. So the doors were closed. You can go to Birobidzhan. Who would go to Birobidzhan, frankly? I mean, would you go from Moscow to Birobidzhan? Are you Michiganer? So it's mostly Kaptsonim, really poor people, and idealists, there were, and communists who were told to go. So three major groups. Very interesting statistic. And it's a little bit maybe exaggerated, but there is some grain of wisdom in it. Among all territories, places of Jews who emigrated from the former Soviet Union to Israel in the 90s, late 80s and 90s, it's more than 1 million kids. Percentage-wise, not numbers, but percentage-wise, the largest percentage is from Birobidzhan. The largest percentage is from Birobidzhan. The largest percentage of Jews who came back from Israel, percentage-wise, is from Birobidzhan. So it's like an anecdote, I don't know how. I've read it in several sources. Maybe this is a BS, but I don't know. And I mean, there is not, yes?
Why are there no final letters in Yiddish in Soviet?
Oh, this is a language reform. This is also altogether. They thought it would be easier. Look, I mean, you are trying to educate although we know that all Jews, no matter how poor you are, you should learn Torah, yeah? But at that time, so there were already some destitute elements, so they wanted to give this education to everybody. This would simplify. Another thing, I don't know if Herschel will agree with me, another thing was that if you teach a generation this kind of Yiddish, and then they will get the publications from international Yiddish, they wouldn't know because they wouldn't recognize 11 elements. 11! It's like my dad, who came here in the United States in 1995, and when he was seeing forwards, he said, no, this is not Yiddish, because he would see what Shabbos and Matone, No, he never saw such. He was fluent in reading this Soviet Yiddish. So there are two basic reasons. There is a grain of sense in this. And this is not only, by the way, the Soviet invention. So there were writers and poets, a poetical movement in Zich, they were using it for a while. So, but
Commercial publishers in Warsaw.
no, but this was the hugely used. Can you imagine in 1930s 130,000 kids going to school studying Yiddish, using this kind of Yiddish? Of course, they were brainwashed, plus with the alphabet totally alienated from the general international Yiddish.
Why didn't go more refugees during the Second World War?
Why they didn't go to Birobidzhan?
Yeah.
There were plans. There were plans to settle there 80,000 Jews from Poland and Romania. But you know, der Mensch tracht and God lacht. So all plans never materialized. Unfortunately, yes, it would be great, but unfortunately, it's the conjunction mood, so it never happened. Never happened. Einstein was also in this campaign to bring more Jews to Birobidzhan. So, no. Yes.
How close is Birobidzhan to Harbin?
Harbin is 1 hour flight.
Our flight. But did any things happen between those two?
No. There was Jewish community there, but yeah, there is no, because again, it's ideology. You were not supposed. You are Soviet Jews. You should be proud of being a Soviet Jews, and you should hate everybody else. No, not only Jews, just the imperialists, enemies. This was, and this worked. Yes.
I did a Google on here. What keeps the city? I mean, it's in the middle of no place, it looks like, and it's got terrible weather. I mean,
Was there because there was a very decently developed, not great, but decently developed light industry, clothing factory, Jews, tailors, and shoemakers. The best clothing and shoe factory in the Far East, in the Soviet Union, was in Birobidzhan, believe it or not.
so and how do you get access to it? Is there major railroads? Or
Of course, Trans-Siberian. You can go all the way to Moscow, and if it's 6 day schlep, but I mean you can get there. I'm so thrilled that there is interest and that you came on this sunny day, Sunday. But I think I already tortured you enough. Unless there are more questions.
How did your parents come to be there? You
Um,
said there were 3 reasons.
So again, my parents were very poor in. I didn't tell you. I started to tell you about my mother's side because this was the first wave of migrations. Late 1920s. My mother's parents came in 1929. She was born in 1930. My father's family came in the second wave of migration, which is very, very interesting. 1947, after World War II, and they came from the Crimea, another hope, when many Jewish Soviet leaders paid their price for this, dreaming of having this Jewish republic in the Crimea. So they came from the Crimea also because of hunger. It was hunger and anti-Semitism. Tatars started to come back to Crimea, claiming back their possessions, blaming Jews of taking their places. So this was brought. My dad, he was a Komsomol organizer, something like this, and he could not go. He had to stay, so he made his way to Moscow, get to Mikhoels. He told me about this a couple of years before he dies. I'm going to kill myself. I didn't record it here. I didn't record him, but he told me that he came to Mikhoels, and Mikhoels took pity on him and wrote a special certificate. Mikhoels is the director of the famous Soviet Yiddish state theater Gosset, and also was the top authority, not only actor but director, top authority for speaking for Jews, for Soviet Jews. So in order to get something, you need to go to Mikhoels. So he came to him, Mikhoels took pity, and he wrote a certificate that my dad can go to Birobidzhan, and he gave him 9 books. You know why? Not to read, so that he can sell it and buy something for himself to read, to eat and not to read.
Question.
Yes.
Hi. In the, I believe the 50s, the mid-50s, when Stalin murdered the Jewish intellectuals, the poets, the
It was
writers,
1952, August 12th. Yes.
did it impact the community of Birobidzhan?
I would say no. It impacted everybody. It's first of all, nobody knew about this until 1956. And in 1956, they knew about this in the United States. They still didn't know about this in the Soviet Union. It became an open fact with perestroika in the late 1980s. Can you imagine for 40 years total silence? So, but this is totally another topic, but it's a very important topic, yes. I don't think the community of Birobidzhan was influenced by this. There was no impact whatsoever. Yes?
Was it book burning?
There were, I mean, there are some exaggerated facts, there were, yes. But I thought myself, I misled my readers, I published that there were 30,000 books, but it's no, there were some, there was censorship on books of the writers who were arrested and persecuted. So these books were taken out from all libraries and put in a special archive. And some of them were burnt, yes.
No, in terms of...
sorry, you...
You mentioned that there's now a rabbi in Birobidzhan, but when in the earlier years it was totally secular. Is that correct? Was there any kind of
yes.
Jewish religious life?
Very interesting question. It was not allowed. Religion was not allowed. But of course, man macht sich nicht wissendig. The old Jews who came from the Städtlach, of course they were having their secret minyonim. But for the young generation, yes, there was no access to religion in the 30s, 50s, up to 80s. Up to 80s.
But not only Jews.
No, but actually no. I'm taking this back. No, the synagogue did exist officially from right after World War II, 1945.
So what for?
With the, huh?
So what for?
So the old Jews can go and pray.
Yeah.
But it was very alarming because the first year it opened, 400 people came to celebrate Rosh Hashanah. So, and this was very alarming to party authorities, and they were suppressing it immediately.
History.
Yes.
No, there was precedence for, let's say, the Soviet artists who wanted to escape the Soviet constraints went to an autonomous region in Uzbekistan. Was there any less restraints in Birobidzhan in terms of controls from Moscow? Could Jews do more, or could the Russians do more than they could in Moscow? And what about the present world? Has the Western world come to Birobidzhan?
So, in terms of restriction, I think they had even more restrictions because it's easier to control this small place rather than this huge Moscow. So, and control was all over. Is there.
Okay.
All American films shown there. Yes, this. I saw. Bohemian Rhapsody, the same day it was shown in Birobidzhan. So.
In Russian?
No. I think so. Yes, of course. In Yiddish. Yes.
These are two obscure questions, and you're welcome to thrust them aside. One, in the U.S., what was the difference between Ikar and Abidjan? And secondly, the left in the U.S. sang all sorts of Birobidzhan songs. Did those songs actually exist in Birobidzhan?
So first question is, it's kind of semi-academical. IKOR was organization created in 1928, pro-communist. Abidjan was created years later, 1936, and it was kind of more inclusive. I think it's not so strict in terms of ideology. Yes. And regarding songs, some of them they did sing, and some of them they didn't, because there were tons of songs on Birobidzhan. I'm sorry, because I haven't finished my presentation. So this is really. Oh, somebody saw my kvetcher? Yeah, somebody. Where did I put it? But it's. I'm not a professor, but I have a professor cough. So Miri, it's 2 minutes.
No,
A kvetcher. So can when I'll tell you, but not now. So one of the dream which I had before coming to Birobidzhan is to translate a aforementioned curriculum which I wrote, Yiddish year-round for the beginners. I wanted to translate it into Russian so that the Russian-speaking Yiddish instructors could teach kids Yiddish. And one of my students, Sam Milstein, found out that I'm going to Birobidzhan and that I want to publish this curriculum. And he convinced his parents to sponsor my trip to Birobidzhan and to publish this book. And this is done. This is done yesterday. And so moving and touching is that there is also a very nice addition. My just has the curriculum, but curriculum how to teach kids Yiddish and Jewish holidays. So this is Yiddish songs about Jewish holidays, done by the chorus of the Workmen's Circle schools in 1974, and it's now an addition to this curriculum. So, and if somebody of you know Russian, we are happy to send you this curriculum.
How about the English? How about the Yiddish version?
Yiddish, yeah, but Yiddish, English, but this is Russian Yiddish. So this is like this was my dream. Do we have sound here? Because my last, I wanted also to show it you. So interesting, the flag of Birobidzhan is rainbow, but again, it's because of joy. And it's such an amazing coincidence. And this is Sataka, who is here, who is greeting people in Birobidzhan with her kids in Yiddish, but we don't have sound, right? Yeah, we do.
Put the mic here.
Mir wohnen in Tokio. Gut Jahr und seid gesund. Dank Sataka. I'm surprised that you're the first to ask. Because usually it's the first question. I don't know, I don't want to know. I only want how many Jews live in Birobidzhan. And I'm saying that before, I'm not so interested. I'm really interested that Yiddish and Jewish culture should have a respected place in my hometown forever. Forever.
I think Google said about 10 or 15,000.
No,
it's about
Alevai 2,000. Alevai. Yeah.
1,600.
Yeah, maybe.
Are any young people in the former Soviet Union interested in going to Birobidzhan?
I just showed you.
I didn't hear that.
I just showed you this guy. This is he is from Birobidzhan, was in Israel, came back with intention to just really to grow Jewish tradition. He is not interested in Yiddish, but he is becoming to understand and appreciate its importance.
I was talking about people, young people from the Soviet Union.
From the former Soviet Union, so I don't think so, frankly. I don't think so. But I mean, we have a lot of young people there, so it's as long as they stay and build.
So, what is actually the meaning of IKAR?
Идише колонизация организация. It's organization to support colonization in the Soviet Union. Yeah?
Is he Chabad?
Yes. Yes, he's Chabad, but very nice guy. Very And about the terrain, to the nature of Birobidzhan. I mean, it's cold in winter for sure. It's very hot in summer. A lot of mosquitoes, not in the city though. Like outside the city, a lot of mosquitoes. But as I told you, it was done by the architects from Leningrad, now St. Petersburg. It has a face of its own. Unfortunately, I have tons of slides, but I think I showed you these Jewish places, and they are not looking shabby or without taste.
Besides language in and of itself, to me the value of Yiddish is in its culture, in its tremendously rich literature, its folk culture. To what extent is that being transmitted? Not only there, but here.
So we are talking about this. There is a camp, as there is school, which has this Jewish curriculum, pretty serious. No Yiddish, but yes, literature of Jews who were writing in Yiddish, history of Jewish autonomous region and Jews, and so it's I think on the same level as it's here in general.
Are non-Jews learning Yiddish?
Yes.
Like in Poland, is the same?
Yes.
Does Workman Circle have a presence there?
No, but you saw the pin. I am Workman Circle, and I want to make a shtickle propaganda. I'm very fortunate to run a program for Yiddish language and culture, which is now the largest, as I told you, in the United States. I'm not exaggerating, because you won't find anywhere in the United States, in one place, we run, in this last semester, we ran 31 Yiddish class. 20 of them, 31 Yiddish class with 330 students. Miri is our teacher. She's teaching 2 classes. Last semester she had over 20 students from 5 countries. We have students from 18 countries, and we are using professional programs. So you come in class, you see yourself, you see teacher, you see materials, and we have best Yiddish teachers in the world. 18 teachers are teaching Yiddish in our classes. Our online classes start in 2 weeks. If you have a desire to study Yiddish, come to me and I can sign you up immediately, or you can sign yourself. So,
What's the website?
it's a website, it's circle.org. Circle.org. What we do, Yiddish language online classes. Yes.